Welcome to 𝐲𝐮'𝐿 Syndicate. If you're paying attention, you know that you only make money when you work. It might be great money, but it's dependent on you. The information on this podcast will help you solve that. We interview experts and provide analysis into financial freedom through commercial real estate. Why? To help physicians like you thrive. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to 𝐲𝐮'𝐿 Syndicate. This is your host, Dr. Michael McManus. Let's jump back into our conversation with Tre Bourdeaux and a deeper dive into industrial real estate.
So when we look at some of the other, like multifamily, things got so crazy in that time period, really 2020 till when interest rates shifted. And now there's a lot of operators who are in trouble. With dirt, now you don't have the same expenses going into it, but you do have holding costs. And if people expected to see, something happen, has there been any distress in the industrial market, or is it kind of kind of held and not gone down?
Yeah, there's been some projects that have come up. There's not really been that many that have been, I would say, real distress. There has been some that have been distressed. There's a couple that come to mind. But outside of that, our market, it's been pretty strong. Typically Utah's economy is usually one of the last to get affected by something negative and one of the first to bounce back. We have a top 5 economy in the country. It's been that way for half a decade. So that kind of plays into some of the distress factors, and we're also a tight-knit community. So typically, if something is under distress, you can walk down the road, somebody, and they'll buy it from you without you ever getting a sniff of it. So, there hasn't been too much distress. There's a lot of local players here, and it's a lot of, people that have just been in the market, so they understand how to weather for a storm better than most people. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot more opportunities today than there's ever been. There's no questions about that, whether it's distress or not. We see a new opportunity. We see a new industrial site come on at least once or twice a week. That's like, okay, how's this going to shake out? Is pricing realistic? Who's out there? But it's good. It's all good.
So let's dig into, if somebody's relatively new to industrial and they say, I like this. I don't want to do multifamily anymore. What kind of advice, or where should they start for looking at industrial? There's a lot of different things that fall under industrial. And what looks solid now, or what maybe doesn't have as good of an outlook going forward?
Anything smaller is solid right now. It's also the easiest thing to understand. When you can walk in a 2,000 square foot space, it gives you good deception or perception of what you're looking at. You can go groups, because at 2,000 square feet, that's typically for most people the smallest they would ever go. But we're starting to see users at 1,000 feet. But if you walk into a space like that, you can walk in and you say, okay, you can really understand ratios, parking, almost what works, what doesn't, size, ceiling height, all those things. Because if you walk into 2,000 feet at 18-foot clear heights, that's typically really where those often shake out. Maybe 24, you never really see 2,000 feet at 28-foot clear. Okay, your office is maybe 10 or 15% of that. That's kind of that ratio. We often see it go all the way up to 100 or 200,000 feet. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, yeah, 10,000, 10% or whatever, on your office. You can kind of get your lay of the land if you walk into a smaller space, and just understand it's important, because doing bigger transactions, it's a lot easier to work with mom and pops when you get going, because it allows you to not only teach them along the way, but you're teaching yourself while you're learning how to do it. And it's a lot easier to walk through. Typically the lease is going to be less than 12 pages, versus an institutional lease, you're looking at 40 to 60 pages sometimes, and nobody likes that, council doesn't love that. And so, yeah, I would say, there's a lot more that can be easily learned on the smaller increments, dealing with the smaller companies initially. And then as you go up, it's all the same. It just might take a little bit longer, and there might be some hurdles, and there might be something you don't understand from the lease. But if my advice to anybody is if you're getting an industrial estate, understand where, understand your market in the sense of who's using the space, who's the user, what do they need, how much of that product exists, where does it exist? Like for me, I can tell you throughout this capital county here in Salt Lake that, there's small product over here, there's small product over here, or I can tell you a business park that's going to have, maybe a couple of 5,000 or 6,000 square foot units with docks. Understanding your supply and your market helps you kind of get the lay of the land, and it kind of helps you adjust to your client's needs. And that's kind of the easiest way, is once you know what they're looking for, you can help walk them through that process, because oftentimes in that increment, that product is hard to come by. So if you do know about it ahead of time, you can kind of tip off the client ahead of time, get in there, and then you could start working through a transaction and learn the ins and outs, start to finish.
Are there anything that are kind of no-goes in that small space? Like the door height, the ceiling height, because you get some older properties that, that it may look like a great deal. Somebody comes across and goes, "Ah, man, look, here it is." That there's a reason it's cheap, and things that are hard to lease.
Yeah, anything with lower clear. I mean, you can get, in some senses, you can get away with 12's tough, 14 you might squeak by. It's still super tough. And then, you still want to have a 10 by 10 doors, kind of tough. 10 by 12s, again, you can kind of squeak by. Right now, everything usually is 12 by 12 or, 12 by 14 or 14 by 16 now. So just staying away from the obsolete product. There's not a tremendous amount of that stuff here. I don't know why there's a lot of smaller stuff, but it just never really has any vacancy. So a lot of people just don't know about it. But yeah, I would say those are the number one things: clear heights and door sizes.
Are those buildings, when they, once they're old and they're there, are people finding uses for them where they're still leasable? It's at a lower rate, or are they kind of hitting that point where they're better to be, it's tough. You can be like, well, knock it down. Let's build something that fits the needs. But when construction costs are super high, to knock it down and build something new becomes a tough thing.
Yeah, no, there's people have continued to find good uses for them. Anytime you're marketing call it something 50% below market, there's going to be somebody there for it. There's just, somebody's always looking for a deal. So there's that user. And then we've also seen office users kind of like more of that industrial space, that more industrial feel, exposed ceilings, decks, so on and so forth. So we've seen some office users, go in and retrofit an industrial building to fit their need, so long as the parking works. So there's typically a use, whether it's owner user or just somebody storing it. We have a good handful of people out here that will just buy something to store their stuff in. It's typically 10,000 feet or less. But we've seen to very rarely have we run into buildings that are obsolete to the point of demolition. So we're not there yet, but I think that we will get there on a couple sites at some point.
At some point, have you seen? Now, you talked about you'd seen building costs start to come down a little bit. And I saw this when we were still in Green Bay. We were looking at building retrofitting an office building and adding on to it. And that was, 2020. And we couldn't get it designed and approved fast enough to keep up with the increases in building costs. And it ran away to where it was a home run deal when we started it. And by the time we were, ready to sign contracts, it didn't make any sense anymore. And that was probably the worst of the skyrocketing costs. So you've said you started to see them coming down some. Is it enough that it's starting to affect, where deals will pencil out that you can build something?
Yeah, we're starting to see. I mean, we get a call, I'd say at least once a week. It's probably more than that, but at least once a week, from somebody trying to understand the market, like any developer who's out of our market trying to get into our market would do. Call the broker who controls the product. What is the lease rates? What do I build? What can I get? How much does the dirt cost? Where are you seeing building costs at? So when you get those calls again, you can get a sense of things starting to turn a little bit from where they were. And so that's good. And yeah, I think things are starting to pencil. Certain people are, we've gotten some people that have written offers on sites where for the longest time it was the only people that were writing offers on dirt were owner users. Very rarely were you getting somebody just to go buy a piece of land and go spec on it, especially, in the last year or two. So we've kicked off one project that was kind of an anomaly because we already had it planned and the money had already kind of been set aside. But yeah, so I think we're coming around. I think construction costs, are they where they need to be at? That's one of the functions. It really is going to come down to the three: with your land costs, your construction costs, and then where's debt at. And debt's usually the last hurdle that you run into, and that's usually the number one reason why it's not there.
Are you seeing people, and I guess this has been, the big topic for the last, week since Jackson Hole meeting, where people have started to see that 3% probably won't happen again. Maybe it will. And are putting that into their pricing and what they think things are worth. Or are people still waiting to see significantly lower interest rates?
I think if it wasn't an election year, I think that we would probably be, and to be honest with you, that's just a reason for people to not make decisions. I don't know that it has the biggest impact. Some people it does. I'm not saying it's not important, but it's typically the number one thing that we hear in our business in an election year is, I'm just going to hold off because it's an election year. And there's usually no validity beyond that. Yeah, I think people are trying to get an understanding of, and especially in our market, there was such an increase in rental rates in 2020 and 21 that people either got locked in at a rate that before it was high, and so their cycle's coming due, and that cycle will probably come due in the next 2 years from all of that. And so I think that people are trying to evaluate what the long term looks like. It's a lot different in Utah because, like I said, our economy's just traditionally been so strong, and people who understand and who have been here long enough always will just tell you, well, they're naturally just going to lease rates are naturally just going to keep going up. But I think everybody's waiting for the first person to go. I don't think somebody wants to be the first person to go. Now, the first person that does go is probably going to come out okay, because I think we just haven't had delivered that much product. There's not a lot of product that really just delivered that's new, especially in Salt Lake County. So those people who are built and they're newer and it's ready to go, they probably have a bigger window than the person that's going to go vertical and be additional 12 months out because everybody else is going to go. But yeah, I think everybody's waiting to see what the interest rates do. I think they are penciling in that it'll never be at 3%. I think some people have gotten hit with that. They're cool with it. They understand that was great. And if they made the right decisions then, they're probably in a good situation now. And if they didn't, then they're probably kicking themselves. And they're just looking for the right opportunity. And I think people know that it won't be at 3. I think we're going to start to see in the next 90 days, I don't know if you've heard this, but the big banner saying is survive to 25. I don't know if you've heard that, but that's what we're hearing a lot of, is just survive to 25 and just wait this out. And there's a lot of people with dry powder ready to go. So.
Yeah, they were in the multifamily world. They were talking. I mean, I forget what the saying was, but it was something like, 23 was surviving to 24, and a lot of talk about, oh, well, once interest rates come down, we'll be able to make this deal work again. And it seemed like, the ones who saw that this was bad and sold early did much better than the ones who tried to ride it
Hold
out on
on. Yeah.
short-term debt, and that they really got in trouble. Now, so just because we were talking about that, so there was in the multifamily world a lot of people doing things that, they were using 2-year debt and 3-year debt because it was so cheap and they could amplify their returns. Since in industrial, you're typically looking at longer leases. Are the developers looking at longer term debt in general? Because I haven't seen as many industrial developers talking about, their mezzanine debt being so short.
Yeah. Yeah. Typically, I mean, it's going for the permanent financing longer term. I don't think that we've had, if you're in a situation like that, it was a notion that you probably shouldn't be doing anything just because the risk today, you weren't unsure what the risk was going to be tomorrow. And it didn't make sense. And in our market, some of the bigger entities, Exeter is now one of the bigger entities, but there's still 2 other local family offices that control a lot of product in the capital county, and they're a pretty good tip off on if somebody's going to do something or not. And so you kind of just always tell them and watch what they're doing. So yeah, we haven't had a lot of, like I said, there was only been really one situation along the Wasatch Front of somebody being not so smart with their approach. Yeah.
So because this is, I mean, like you said, it's a close community, and if somebody was in trouble, they walk down the street and find somebody, they kind of know who might be in the market for it, what they're willing to pay. And so the conversations can be short. For somebody who says, wow, Salt Lake looks like a great place to invest, and they're not a big player, they're not bringing in, $100 million to invest. What would be the ideal place to kind of start looking at properties here?
I don't know that there's a one place better than the next. To be honest with you, there's opportunities in our backyard, core market opportunities. But it costs. It comes at a cost. What we would always say is that somebody who's not in our market and wants to be in our market, you got to have a sharp pencil and you got to be ready to pay. There's just typically somebody who's already here is tipped off on an opportunity beforehand. That's sometimes why those opportunities get weeded out and you don't see them, but they do exist. Are they going to be at a 7 cap? No. Are they going to be at around a 6, maybe 6.25, 6.5? Probably. It's not going to be super fruitful day one, but it depends on the type of investor you are and what that hold looks like. Because somebody who's here for a longer hold and like yourself, who might move here and want to be here, that might not be a bad 10-year hold for them, especially if you believe in the economy here and you believe in the fact that everybody in the world's going to move here because the Olympics just got announced, which is all we seem to have heard the last couple of weeks. But no, there's a lot of people that's got a lot of hype behind it, and people are looking forward to it. And, so sometimes it's not about, it's always about basis and it's always about picking something up right. It's about getting the deal that makes the most sense. But at the same time, it's just hard to get in our market. But, there's opportunities in the Capital County and core market. There's opportunities in the adjacent counties along the Wasatch Front. I don't think, if you can find an opportunity in Salt Lake County, it's great. I think if you can find an opportunity in South Davis County, I think it's great. I think even North Davis County is great, and certain parts of Weber County are great. Utah County, northern Utah County specifically, if you could find a good multi-tenant asset up there, great opportunity, and a good stabilized opportunity with stabilized and newer product in South Utah County, I also think is a good opportunity. We just had a client that did the same thing, picked up a brand new building, and has knocked it out of the park on the leasing, because our team's done a great job and they're super happy. So there's a lot of good opportunities, And again, speaking to Salt Lake County, we just had a client pick up a building in June. Total mark-to-market deal. So quite a bit of risk in the sense of you got to trust the process and understand that this is what the market is and we're telling you it is. And we've seen some really good success inside 60 days on being able to get those numbers, and they're super happy and ready to do it again. So they do exist, whether it's here or in the adjacent counties. It's just about understanding what that risk looks like and what you're willing to pay.
So since you're, a little bit more in this, in industrial as a whole, and probably hear a lot about what's going on around the country. So I started seeing recently in some of the investing platforms that are out there, the crowdsourcing, that 3-4 years ago, they were all multifamily. I mean, if you could see one, like the most diversity you got would be mixed use, that it's multifamily with retail on the bottom floor, or you might find an office once in a while. Well, now they're really pushing out a lot of retail. So that it seems like, pushing out a lot of industrial, like industrial is picking up in the eye of the retail investor. I guess nationwide, are there any other areas that you see are strong like Salt Lake, or maybe some that have been might already have been seeing their heyday and be overly hot?
Yeah, I think San Diego has been a good market for a lot of people. It's grown in the last 5-10 years. I would say that, like, the people that we talk to that are moving or wanting to move money here and look at opportunities seem to have a presence in Phoenix. Usually typically have a presence in Phoenix. Sometimes you'll hear about Vegas, Colorado, sometimes Texas, Dallas, Austin outskirts. You hear about those markets. Idaho's changed a lot over the last couple of years. We've heard a lot about Reno, what that's done and how that looks and what's going on there, especially in Sparks. So those are some of the markets. Those are typically, every market that I just named is a market that we typically compete with. So that's probably why I name it. Not so much Austin and Dallas, but the other hub and spoke locations like Salt Lake, which having been Reno, Vegas, Phoenix, Denver, Boise, are typically are the multi-market searches that we end up in. So
is Reno, does that have to do at all with the Tesla super factory, whatever it's called?
Yeah, some to do with that. They've also have a huge industrial park out there where they have a lot of development going on. So we hear about it a lot.
Okay. Is that where you have customers coming in and they're kind of wanting to find, should I be looking for something in Salt Lake versus Vegas versus Reno type of thing?
Yeah, we just kind of recently had that happen with a company out of Northern California doing a multi-market. And like I said, 9 times out of 10, you're at least going to hear about Reno. Usually hear about Reno, sometimes Boise, depending on really what they're looking for logistically. Those are we're cheaper than Phoenix and Vegas, but are we cheaper than Reno? Sometimes it just depends. So yeah, that's just.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
I would say, are these mostly distribution and warehouse type ones? We're talking about the hub and spoke.
Yeah. For instance, typically, yeah, it's distribution. Now, I will tell you that the company that was looking at a multi-market search is in manufacturing. So you start to have to run power rates, commercial power rates and how those compare to the multi-markets that you're looking at, which Utah happens to be one of the cheaper on a commercial power cost. So, you throw those in there and those sometimes make the difference in manufacturing, but typically it is distribution.
So how is the manufacturing world is there? I saw recently, it looked like it was Purple Mattress's old facility and south
Alpine.
side, like down in Alpine, was for sale, and they'd moved up
Yep.
to Willa, I think.
Yep. Yep.
Are there, so is that a growing area? Is there more manufacturing coming in, or is most of it logistics?
In my time, now what we typically tend to see is a distribution building that brings in more power. Call it, on 150,000 feet, call it like 3,000 to 5,000 amps of 480 power to a building. That way, in the event of a manufacturing tenant looking at the building, it's something that they can accommodate, because nobody really is building the standard crane manufacturing building that's 24 feet clear height with, on, a 40,000 foot facility on 6 or 7 acres. Nobody's coverage ratio doesn't make sense. The dirt pricing you can't get there. Versus somebody just saying, okay, well, I'm going to go to 38 or 40% coverage on a site. And if it's a manufacturing user, we'll look at it. We just need to make sure that we have the power. So, manufacturing's been good. The vacancy rate in our market's always typically pretty low as it comes to manufacturing. And so how we've managed to keep that low is just nobody's building it. And now typically a lot of developers are looking at just bringing in more power in the event that they need to do a manufacturing deal in their building.
Okay, interesting. Well, this has been great, Trey. I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Anything else maybe that you think would be worthwhile for somebody listening who's new to industrial real estate? Something they should be thinking about, or where they should be looking, and also how to get a hold of you.
Yeah. If you're starting out, I would just say, take pride in understanding how the company works. I think that's the most important thing on our end, and why it works. It's important in commercial because companies differ in what they need. That's the number one thing I'd say. The second thing that I'd say, time kills all deals, is always just a natural deal point that we live and die by in our industry. But yeah, I would say you got to love what you do and who you work with, and want to help, and care about solutions. I think that's the number one thing. So Utah's a great market. I'm from here. I only know what to sell this state and everything it's about. So yeah, as far as how to get a hold of me, my cell phone number, should I give them my cell phone number?
Or if you just want a way to get a hold of you through work,
yeah, well, you can
get spammed on it.
Yeah, I guess that's better. I work at Legend Partners here in Salt Lake City. My email is my first, it's Tre Bourdeaux at legendcommercial.com. So that's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me, or on the Legend Partners website. My contact information's there. Like you said in the introductions, all things industrial real estate, acquisition, disposition, tenant representation, landlord representation. We kind of do it all, as well as ground up development, build to suit. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you everybody listening. Again, I hope this has been valuable to you, and we'll see you next time here on Surgeon Syndicate.
Do you care about paying too much in taxes? And would you like to save more of your hard-earned dollars? Here's what we found. We found that most financial professionals have a one-size-fits-all solution. So the question is, would it make it easier for you to have someone tailor your tax solutions to your individual needs so you can keep more of your money and do what you want with it? That is exactly what we do at 𝐥𝐴.
As surgeons, we know the difference between routine surgery versus life-threatening interventions. And I want you to know that I've used 𝐲𝐴 and her team for my personal financial intervention, and I love the results. I would do you a disservice if I didn't recommend them to you.
We'd love to help you, so let's jump on a call and see how we can collaborate. Simply go to www.𝐥𝐴.com/McManus and book your free call today.
This has been an episode of Surgeon Syndicate. If you got value from this episode, you know other surgeons are hungry to become job optional, and you can help them by sharing this content today.
schedule a call and we can make a plan. Looking forward to having you with me on the next episode.